Good evening. I hope you're all well, watching this at home in the comfort of your nice, cosy armchairs. We're going to look at Hebrews 8:13 this evening, but first let's listen to Hebrews chapter 8 being read to us.
Hebrews chapter 8. Now the main point of what we are saying is this. We do have such a high priest, who sat down at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heaven, and who serves in the sanctuary, the true tabernacle set up by the Lord, not by a mere human being. Every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices, and so it was necessary for this one also to have something to offer. If he were on earth, he would not be a priest, for there are already priests who offer the gifts prescribed by the law. They serve at a sanctuary that is a copy and shadow of what is in heaven. This is why Moses was warned when he was about to build the tabernacle, "See to it that you make everything according to the pattern shown you on the mountain." But in fact, the ministry Jesus has received is as superior to theirs as the covenant of which he is mediator is superior to the old one, since the new covenant is established on better promises. For if there had been nothing wrong with that first covenant, no place would have been sought for another. But God found fault with the people and said, "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they did not remain faithful to my covenant, and I turned away from them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will establish with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbors or say to one another, 'Know the Lord,' because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more." By calling this covenant new, he has made the first one obsolete, and what is obsolete and outdated will soon disappear.
Well, for those who could pick up on it, there was a bit of a threatening prediction in Hebrews 8:13. It wouldn't have seemed threatening to everybody, but to quite a lot of people it would have. And it was threatening. In 70 AD in Jerusalem, Hebrews 8:13 was brought to life in a very dramatic way. It was an event that for Jews and Christians has been central in defining our faith and their faith and what it meant right until the present day now. See, God had been at work for 2,000 years since Abraham. He was calling, preserving, judging, forgiving and blessing his people Israel. He commanded a crazy and elaborate system of sacrifices and priestly ministries and feasts and rituals to define Israel among all the other nations and to make himself known to them and to point them to a future fulfillment of all things in Jesus. It made Israel stick out like a sore thumb, of course, because this whole elaborate system was central to everything they did. It completely defined their lives. But in 70 AD, the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, along with the entire city. This iconic place that was the centre of Judaism was gone, ransacked and destroyed by the Roman armies. And it's never been rebuilt. Or to put it in a short and sweet, yet rather cliched way, out with the old and in with the new. This somewhat drastic change from the Old Testament to the New Testament, the Old Covenant to the New Covenant, had to happen. Not just because it was prophesied, but because the whole point of the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, is that it would be superseded. It was never going to be permanent. The whole story of the Bible is one of God's creation, of the people who abandoned the very God who made them, and of God's plan of redemption to restore this broken relationship. And the Old Covenant was completely unable to do this. There is no way, and this is a good thing, but there's no way that God could really be appeased and turn away his wrath and accept his created people back just by us performing elaborate ceremonies. There was no way that sacrificing animals and feasts and celebrations and times of mourning and of joy and following a multitude of rules would ever really do anything except show us that we desperately needed something else. And this something else is the new covenant. The writer of Hebrews brings the word new in the phrase new covenant from Jeremiah 31, where he said this: by calling this covenant new, he's made the first one obsolete, and what is obsolete and outdated will soon disappear. What did he have in mind? This old covenant will soon disappear. It's obsolete and outdated. While for those who hold where life was defined by this obsolete and outdated covenant, this predicted disappearance would have been an awful thought, even though they knew it was destined to happen. So let's think about how Hebrews 8:13 was meant to be understood. You see, those Christians at the time acclaimed that the Messiah had come, this Jesus of Nazareth. Most of Israel, of course, rejected this claim. This rejection ended in the crucifixion of Jesus and the persecution of the early church. The claims of the Christians raised a huge question for those Jewish people. What would become of their way of life? This new faith seemed radical and different and, well, wrong. For example, in Acts chapter 6, Stephen is proving to be a pretty amazing witness for the truth of Christianity. To stop him, fake news was used. And what did it say? Well, the fake news said this: this fellow never stopped speaking against this holy place and against the law. For we've heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and change the customs Moses handed down to us. Well, there you have the meaning of Christianity for those Jewish leaders. It meant the destruction of the old ways, the removal of the first covenant. They knew, of course, this would happen because they knew what Jeremiah said. Stephen spoke against this Jerusalem, the temple and the law, and they really believed that Christianity threatened the existence of all of it. But if the temple fell, then what would become of all the customs of the Old Testament and the whole religious life of this nation? The issue was so important to them that they had Stephen knocked off to try and keep it all quiet. Well, it didn't work, did it? The destruction of the temple was the end of Judaism as it had been known for hundreds of years. The priesthood was done for. The animal sacrifices could no longer happen. The whole life of worship that happened in Jerusalem and the temple was completely gone, wiped out. And it's never ever been restored, even to our own day now. Judaism as we know it now is not the same way of life practiced before 70 AD. What did this mean for the Jewish people? Well, it was a witness to the truth of Christianity. Jesus predicted it, and it happened. Now the Romans, they didn't care two hoots about all of this temple nonsense. They just wanted political peace. And to obtain that, they had to subjugate these rebellious people. So the destruction of 70 AD was not some great act of anti-Semitism. It was actually an act of divine judgment. And this is what Jesus said about it. As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, "If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it's hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on the other, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you." That is, they did not recognize the coming of the Messiah. It was God's testimony that the coming of Jesus was in fact what the book of Hebrews says it was, the replacement of shadowy copies with the real thing, Jesus Christ, the Son of God himself. Now let's get back to Hebrews 8:13 with a bit of a sense of what was at stake in these words. By calling this covenant new, he's made the first one obsolete, and what is obsolete and outdated will soon disappear. When Jerusalem fell to Romans in 70 AD and the temple was destroyed and the sacrifices stopped being offered and the Levitical priesthood came to an end, God was saying with his power and complete control over all these events that Jesus Christ was the goal of all of this. Jesus is the real thing. The rest, the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, was just shadowy copies of what was to come. Christianity is a faith that is woven right throughout our history. It's not just a set of ideas or rules or theories. It's about this one person, Jesus Christ, who came into our history to change it forever. Look around today. Isn't it amazing that God has preserved the Jewish people through all that they've been through? And there's yet a future for them in Jesus according to the Bible. But what are they doing? Are they meeting at the temple? No. Are they offering the sacrifices for sin? No. Do they look to the Levitical priesthood to be the mediator between them and God? No. All these things stopped in 70 AD. All these things once central to their faith have ceased to exist. Why? Because Jesus said, you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. The existence of the Jewish people today and the completely different version of Judaism that they follow is a constant witness to the world that the first covenant, the very thing that established them as a nation, has been and still is vanishing away right before their eyes. And that the Messiah, Jesus Christ, has come, that he's ushered in the new covenant in his blood, that the shadowy copies have been replaced by the real thing, and that the Spirit has written the will of God on our hearts. So let's then look at the final great reality of Jesus. On this first day of spring, we're just 2 weeks to go until Easter Sunday. And let's cling to him, patiently waiting until the next great biblical event that Jesus himself told us about. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they'll gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. And so we say now, come Lord Jesus, come. Amen.